Tearing up Eternia, here's your look at the Mega Construx Master Universe Battle Cat vs. Roton. Chew up anything that gets in your way in the buildable Roton. That is until you face off against the mighty Battle Cat. This collectible construction set features 2 micro-action figures, Battle Armor He-Man and Merman, faithfully designed each with 12 points of articulation to create a heroic display. Mount the figures in Roton or on Battle Cat, then find out who cuts who down to size. Before we talk a little bit about this build set, if you guys were ever curious as to how tall these Mega Construx micro figures are, I'm going to go ahead and try my best to get that calculation in order using my trusty tape measure. They're about the same height to one another. I think that Merman is pretty much the same height as He-Man. So I'm going to take the tape measure only to him, and I'm going to go right to the very top of his head. As I said, they're pretty small. Just how small? 2.106 inches to be exact. We can switch that to centimeters, revealing that the micro figure of He-Man is 0.053 centimeters tall. Wow, that is small. To come included, obviously, in order for you to build the set successfully and without error, comes included an instruction guide. The guide tells you how to put together both Battle Cat and Roton. Although Battle Cat is pretty much already assembled, the only thing you have to put on top of him is the armor. It's a pretty simple, straightforward, easy to understand, easy to read instructions. Show you how to put together the minifigures, the micro figures. Those do require some assembly. And then for Battle Cat, like I said, Battle Cat was already assembled. I didn't have to do this step at all. But as I said, it's pretty straightforward. In the end, when it's all said and done, you're looking at about 28 pages, with really the last only being the way that you can display them. We can put ahead the instructions, put them just to the side for the time being. Let's have a look at the minifigures, the micro figures. I keep wanting to call them minifigures. They come included with display stands. I have a real tough time calling these stands. They're not even so much stands as they are like sort of irregularly shaped plastic bases. They do have, of course, the pegs on the top, so it would allow the minifigures, micro figures, stop saying that, micro figures to stand on top of it. You get a couple of variations of them. 2 little slender shards of plastic, ideally suited for both the He-Man and the Merman. And then you get also a slightly larger version that could be displayed for Battle Cat. I'm not sure if really the idea is that somehow these are like puzzle pieces where these are supposed to be coming together and give you an idea or a shape. But they don't really line up to one another. And again, I'm just sort of more perplexed than anything else as to why they give you this specific shape. Like if you're going to give us a display stand for these figures, like give us a shape or something we can identify as being a stand. This, again, looks like just a broken up piece of a flat, a flat flooring tile piece. Like I said, just broken up into different pieces. But you can go ahead and take the figures, just to show you guys I'm not making this up. And even in the instructions, it's just basically you're attaching the figure to the stand. But, I mean, what's happening here? Like, look at the stand itself. It doesn't even look like it's supposed to be really a stand. Anyways, we're going to put that to the side. I want to show you first He-Man. He-Man is a very tiny little character. Assembly is required, and I always seem to have a tough time putting the torso piece, the lower torso piece together. The legs basically are attached to a T-bracket, and then that fits through the furry underoos. You put a little belt piece on, and then this attaches to the top torso piece, which gives you all the articulation on the 12-point articulated figures. So, I mean, they are pretty articulated, but I always seem to have like this gap. This little belt piece just seems to flop around on me. Getting a closer look at the details here on He-Man, it's pretty good. It's, of course, due to the size, just the constraints of having to deal with such a small molded figure. Yeah, the paint's not going to be the greatest when it comes to the eyes and the mouth. They're sort of big splotchy dabs of paint. But I guess for it being a small figure, keeping in mind that this is 2 inches in height, I guess it does a good enough job of mimicking Battle Armor He-Man. He does come included with a weapon, which I sort of have to laugh. The size of the battle axe is almost, well, it's greater than half the length of the figure. I mean, the axe looks pretty good, and it's done in a silver plastic. It just attaches into either one of his hands, just like that. But I mean, good look size of this. Does it have to be this long? I feel like it probably could have been maybe to about there or so. Still, I appreciate the fact that they did come included with weapons. Merman comes included with a corn sword. So if anybody was wondering, oh, I really hope Merman comes included with his corn sword. Yes, he does. He comes included with his corn sword. Quickly, though, looking at the articulation on He-Man. Head rotates back and forth, hinges up and down. It's a ball joint, after all, working behind the scenes. He has hinge joints in the arms. You can rotate the arms all the way around. Bends at the elbow. You rotate the forearm, and you can also rotate the hand. Again, 2-inch tall figure. Waist swivel, legs split out, forward and back, bend at the knee, and no articulation in his little booties, his little fur boots. Not a bad looking He-Man. I just again wish that he stayed assembled a little bit better. I don't feel like he's properly attached, properly assembled here. Moving along, we'll put He-Man down here for a second. Let's have a look at Merman. I really like the look of Merman here. The gold, I will say, is just the icing on the cake here. You've got a really nice gold presented and painted across the top of his face, or front of his face. They did also successfully paint the teeth in, and I don't feel like the paint is really as bad as He-Man's. His eyes, well, of course, we already had a look at that. I think Merman, of the two, is a better looking figure. This did have some assembly required. The torso piece, the arms are all attached. And then you basically just take the armor piece, this chest piece, and slide it over top, pop the head down, and then basically just put the legs through the furry torso, through the belt, and attach the two together. I don't know if I'm making that sound easier than what it is or harder than what it is, but it was difficult, like I said, to get that lower half. There's always, again, that little gap piece. Twist it in place, thinking it's in place, and as quickly as you turn it again, it seems to make another gap. Anyways, Merman has all the same articulation as He-Man. Get a good note to mark down the fact he does have different sculpted feet. I do like the look of that. Overall, not a bad looking Merman. Same articulation, like I said, as He-Man. He comes included with his trident, which I did have to assemble. This top piece attached to the bottom piece, just as two pieces like that. And that fits just into his hand, like that. He does also come included with his corn sword. Why do we keep calling it a corn sword? Because it looks like a corn on the cob. It's a little more pointier than maybe some of the other Merman swords we've seen before, but it's just all molded yellow plastic. And you can go ahead and fit that also into his hand, just like that. The only thing I feel is a bit of a letdown is just, again, those display stands. I really wouldn't even consider them to be display stands. But anyways, we're going to put the figures down here. I want to show you guys Battle Cat. The total build time on all of this, by the way, was probably about 15 minutes. It's always hard to really gauge the proper time because if you're watching TV, you know, hey, look at this scene. Oh, what did I just miss? There's always moments where you're going to be kind of pulled away from what you're building. I would say it's probably, if I was to add up everything, factor in the time it took me to go up and get a drink, come back, sit down, probably take me about 15 minutes, I think, to build the set. Battle Cat certainly was not the hardest to build at all. Literally, the whole body of Battle Cat is already fully assembled. I'm not sure why specifically he has a peg hole on the underside of his body like that. It's a little strange and out of place to me. But he does have peg holes on the backs of his feet. So again, it attaches to that display stand. If you are curious, yeah, you can go ahead and remove the headpiece. You have to be kind of careful, though, because the ball joint, just pop that off like that. He literally has like a hole in the top of his head. Which, yes, admittingly, at least it is nice that you can take the head off, the mask off. But yeah, it does result in looking like he's got a big hole in the head. The ball joint in his neck is good and fine. But if you're not holding on to the head when you take this piece off, a lot of times I find myself yanking the head sculpt off by mistake. And that's obviously don't want to have that happening. You can also go ahead and take the back piece off. It's a little harder of the two to take and remove off, but it works the exact same way. Just pegs on the top of his spine. That's painful. And then without that, you basically got yourself a little cringer. And it's a pretty detailed cringer, I have to admit as well. Like, if you see the eyes, you see the nose, he's got even like the little whisker dots on the side of his face. And like the paint on this guy's really good. In this mode, if you would call this a mode, I would say the only disappointment is the fact that you can't open and close the mouth. It sort of makes you feel like you can, but you can't. He does have articulation here on the head. You can rotate that all the way around. He has two ball joints. So basically there's a ball joint there, moving the head back and forth. And then there's a secondary ball joint right in there, right in the neck. So got a good amount of posability that you can get and pull off with cringer here. The arms, the legs, I should say, move out. Those are also on ball joints. The individual paws can also swivel back and forth and hinge up and down. That's a nice touch. Same thing applies for the back end of things, except if you look at the back leg, the leg here, I don't know why it's not, there we go. The back leg here doesn't have any of the posability in the paws that the front legs do. And then, of course, he has tail articulation as well. To get him back to Battle Cat, you don't need a power sword to do that. All you're going to do is just take that peg on the bottom of his mask, fit that so painfully into the top of Cringer's head, and then do the exact same thing for the saddle. These little 2 pegs right here will fit into the 2 peg holes, and just fit that into place. Sometimes it's difficult to actually gauge whereabouts the holes should be on Cringer. You have to kind of line it up. Find really like the back peg, and then just know that the peg in front of it will be lining up, of course, to that hole. And you've got yourself a little Battle Cat. I like that. I like that the armor is really nice and shiny, too. There's all these little peg points that you could technically take the axe, slide into place like that, or if you want to, you could take the axe, attach it to the side. Basically serves as like weapon ports, even though that seems a little awkward. And then, of course, you can go ahead and take He-Man, slide him down, and he sort of sits. I say sort of sits. It's a little awkward on He-Man, unfortunately. Sort of sits into the saddle there, Battle Cat. You can also really attach his hands to the little handle section there on the front. It involves, of course, twisting the hands around so the clamps are facing forward. And you can do it that way as well. Sort of kind of looks like he's riding a roller coaster, kind of the way he's attached like that. And then, of course, that would eliminate him the possibility of him holding his axe. So there's Battle Cat. Honestly, the real reason why I wanted to get this set was specifically for Battle Cat. It's in a bit of a shame that they didn't give us an original He-Man. Instead, we get ourselves a Battle Armor He-Man, which still is good. We get ourselves a Battle Armor He-Man. But I would have liked if they could have given us an original He-Man. I get the whole idea of this. It's branding this line. So if there are figures that you want to get, you just, of course, have to buy the other sets to get the regular OG He-Man or get the regular Skeletor that, of course, can pilot inside Roton. That being said, let's go ahead and just move Merman out of the way. Get him to stand properly. And let's have a look at Roton. I've always been a big fan of this designed toy. I never had one as a kid, so the idea of getting a little build version of Roton, you know what, let's just move Battle Cat out of the way. Never really had a Roton growing up, so the idea of getting a little build version of Roton looks pretty cool. Kind of like a spider spinning thingamajigger. It does actually have a spinning gimmick, which is pretty cool, the fact that they incorporated it into this. This, of course, as you probably guess it, would take the most amount of time to build because there's all the more involved pieces. Even like the spikes themselves are all things that you sadly have to attach, and probably was the thing that took the longest when it actually came to building Roton here. So yeah, like I was saying, the Roton was the thing that took the longest to build, obviously because it's the thing that has all the most bricks to it. It does have a functioning gimmick, so it does spin like the original 80s toy does have. You don't actually have to do this with your finger, mind you. All you can actually do is on the bottom of it, there's this giant wheel. There's a smaller wheel that spins independently on its own, but the larger wheel is what rubs up against the bottom of the disc and spins this around. Now, of course, it's sort of underwhelming me just doing this by my hand, so if you put it down, say, on a surface, and you roll it, this is where it actually will spin. And you can do that back and forward as well. The instructions to build this were pretty straightforward. I never really had any issues except for one element. It is these spikes. You probably can already see there's one that's not fully aligned and standing straight up. Most of these were pretty easy to put in. I will tell you, as I'm pulling one out, each one of them feels like it's made out of the same material that they use gummy bears. They make gummy bears out of. It's a very soft material. And I get why it has to be soft. Because, of course, if this is something that a kid is going to land on, you don't want this to poke them in the eye. I still feel like soft rubber is still going to poke them in the eye, but it's not going to do as much damage as harder plastic. But you have to take each one of these, a painstaking ordeal, and you have to put them in each one of the holes. Most of them fit in fine. The problem with it, and I probably shouldn't have even removed this one, the problem with it being a softer plastic, you probably already see what's happening here. There's not enough durability to that plastic to fit properly into the hole. And I would say of the 15 minutes it took me to put this together, I spent the longest amount of time trying to get these blasted spikes stuck into these holes. I succeeded, probably a little bit harder now that I got moisturizer on my hand. I succeeded with all of them except for 2. These stubborn ones right here. And I don't know if the peg bottoms were a little bit broader than all the others, but I could get all of them in except for 2, and I ended up having to widen the hole just so I could get this in, and I still have tough time fitting this in place. I get, again, why this has to be a softer material used, but it really is a pain in the you-know-what to get those in every single spot. It literally took me probably, I would say even like 5 minutes after the fact to go in there and just correct all of these. That's the only thing that I would say is a nitpick to this set, is having to put in all these blasted pegs, these little spikes all around the disc. And you see how many there are, how many you actually have to put in. Anyways, it does also have a shooting cannon, 2 on the side actually. You put these little single peg pieces on the end here, and then the idea is this little flick piece, you pop it forward and it launches that off. I think that's fun, the fact that they incorporated that, and that's the case on both sides. There's the eyes printed on the front, only on 2 of the pieces, and it has those kind of tusk teeth. Oh, there I go, popping off one of them. You see, there's the hole that I had to kind of widen to fit that in place. I might just resort in gluing a couple of these, the real stubborn ones that didn't want to go there in the first place. There's a little seating area where you can take yourself. For the time being, we only really have Merman. I'm going to go ahead and remove his weapons out of his hand. I only have Merman for the time being. I would consider getting more of these if I can get myself like a Skeletor, because I feel like Skeletor is really the true pilot of the Roton. And then again, you can just sort of peg him into place like that. And it still works the same way. The wheel allows the disc, the turning blade, to spin back and forth. If you don't properly have your figure in, mind you, and it's a little more difficult, I have to admit, when it comes to Merman, because his feet are a little bit bigger to get him. The problem is, you can see like the peg holes on the undersides of his feet, and you see how close those pegs are to one another. To get one foot in place, you seem to end up overlapping the feet to the peg that's right next to it, especially because he's got these larger webbed feet. I really don't think like Merman was the smartest pick to pick for somebody that could pilot Roton. I get it. I get it. The idea of not bringing a Skeletor in this mix, because of course they want to be able to market more sets. If you want to get yourself a Skeletor, then you have to buy more sets to get yourself a Skeletor. But I really think they should have probably picked a different character that could fit inside of Roton, that didn't necessarily have webbed feet like this. Like with other brick building sets that are on the market, there's different price categories based on obviously the size set that you get for yourself. Now, in the case here of Battle Cat versus Roton, I probably would put this in a medium build category, judging by the size of Roton, the fact that you get 2 micro figures, and you get the larger micro figure of Battle Cat. Now, there are smaller sets than this, still with 2 micro figures, a slightly smaller vehicle. And then on the other end of it, there are sets that obviously have bigger vehicles, sometimes more than one of them, and you get a lot more micro figures. Now, I found this set over on Amazon, and to put proper perspective, Amazon had Battle Cat versus Roton for $34.99. And this is, again, my first time picking up one of the Mega Construx sets. It seemed like $34.99 was really high for the fact of what we got in this set. But then I had to kind of do the math in my head and think to myself, well, if the other brick giant out there was putting out a set similar to this with 2 minifigures, a vehicle, and maybe like an aside accessory like a horse or something the equivalent of Battle Cat, what would they charge for this set? And I guess it would probably be about the same as what we're getting here. Now, this is the first set that I've picked up. One good thing with Amazon is that if I decide to pursue this endeavor, there are more sets available over there. I think they actually have every other Mega Construx sets, but I don't really know if I want to go down the rabbit hole anytime soon and start getting any more of these. Don't get me wrong, I like the design of it, and the idea of me getting a Battle Cat in a smaller size sounds great. But I don't know if I feel like the figures are as good as I had wanted them to be. I mean, if you look at the packaging, and I know they are always going to distort the artwork you see on the front of the box, Merman, while he does look about the same, sitting and piloting Roton, I feel like you get a better looking He-Man, obviously, yes, I get it, on the front of the packaging than what we actually get. The paint is a bit rough on his face. I understand with a smaller scale, 2-inch tall figure, it's a little bit harder to get those finer details done on his face, but I sort of feel like the figures are a bit underwhelming. The Merman was okay, but I don't like really how He-Man turned out. Maybe I may have changed my opinions if we got the original OG He-Man instead of the Battle Armor He-Man, but I feel like my opinion would probably be about the same. The vehicles are good, but the micro figures sort of leave something to be desired. Now, in the past, I had collected the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mega Construx figures, and I may have even praised the line back then. I don't think my opinions have changed, but maybe based on this type of property that they decide to pick up. Turtles are a little bit bigger, a little broader, right? Maybe because they're He-Man figures and a little bit more human-scaled, maybe that's where I'm starting to find a little bit of the shortcomings when it comes to their micro figures. Disagree with me? Let me know down below in the comments section what you guys think of the Master Universe Mega Construx Battle Cat versus Roton. I like the look of Battle Cat. I love the design of Roton, even though the spikes were a pain in the you-know-where. I'm just not sure I'm really wanting to get on board collecting the micro figures. And of course, that's the main reasoning why I would imagine you'd want to be picking up these sets in the first place. But I always like reading your comments down below in the comments section. If you guys are also new to this channel and enjoying all the content you guys are seeing on a regular basis, be sure to hit the subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and come back to this channel regularly, as Monday to Friday, 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we're going to be having a look at new videos. Question is, whether will I be picking up more of the Mega Construx Masters of the Universe? To be decided. I'm going to just say to be decided for the time being. Lots of stuff coming your way, guys, so as always, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.